This year's U.S. Senate race in Virginia pits two former governors against each other. George Allen, the Republican candidate, was elected Virginia's governor in 1993 and was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2000. He was defeated by Jim Webb in 2006. Webb is not running for re-election. Tim Kaine is the Democratic candidate for Senate. He was elected Virginia's governor in 2005. And joining us is the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, George Allen. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be with you.
Now, what do you consider, in your view, the biggest issue in this campaign between you and Mr. Kaine?
I think a proven record of creating job opportunities for Virginians. Most of the people that that Susan and I hear from in Virginia care about jobs and the economy. It permeates conversations in Southwest Virginia. It's the war on coal. Here in the Valley, people care about jobs and some of the energy policies as far as ethanol that's so unrealistic. Is hurting the poultry industry. Throughout Virginia, people care about the jobs that could be lost because of this failed sequestration deal that's going to be devastating to our military readiness and over 200,000 jobs at risk. And that's also a concern, particularly in the Hampton Roads and Northern Virginia area. And so from my reaction to these concerns is that we can do better than this. I envision a better future. There are solutions, whether it's more competitive, fewer loopholes, and a competitive tax policy. Rein in regulations. I hear so many people grousing about the unelected, unaccountable bureaucracies and their regulations. One of the good news stories, as opposed to the banning of coal or the saying no to Virginia on energy, is we need to stop EPA from outlawing coal. We also, and I've said this to the people of Virginia, if I'm hired on to be your voice in Washington, on the day I'm sworn in as United States Senator, as soon as I'm sworn in, I'm introducing a bill to allow us in Virginia to produce oil and natural gas off our coast and use the royalties for roads and transportation. That'll be good for jobs, it'll be good for revenues, and it'll also make our country more competitive and less vulnerable to hostile outside forces. So we're putting forward real positive ideas. The same with health care reforms, rather than having bureaucrats in Washington making health care decisions. Doctors and patients should. And these are big differences with Tim Kaine.
You're for repealing Obamacare?
Yeah, repealing and replacing Obamacare is a real impediment to small businesses. For some, it's they don't want to get over 50 employees. For community hospitals, they're saying they're going to go out of business if this goes into effect. I've heard businesses saying they're going to go out of business if it goes into effect. Some people's religious freedoms are being infringed upon with it. Medical device manufacturers, a variety of others. And so what we ought to do, rather than that, and I do want to replace it with more affordable, personal, and portable health savings accounts where individuals own their own policies. I think small businesses ought to be able to band together across state lines and with other businesses in, say, West Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, and have a larger risk pool to get more competition, more choice, more affordable health care. And I also think the states ought to be given greater flexibility to run Medicaid. There is one good idea in Obamacare that I think should stay, and that is allowing students or young people to stay on a parent's policy till age 26, because right now this is the worst job market for young people. A third move back home after graduating from college. And Susan and I know that from our youngest daughter and her friends. My daughter graduated, our oldest, from JMU. So I feel very strongly the young people ought to be able to pursue their dreams, and health care being on a parent's policy right now is necessary. But there's much better approaches than this very harmful health care tax law.
The Budget Control Act of 2011, which brought last year's debt crisis to an end, contains automatic across-the-board budget cuts that would go into effect in January. You alluded to it in what's called sequestration. It's going to mean big defense cuts for Virginia. You oppose those, right?
Yep.
What would you do, though, to avoid the sequestration?
Yeah, I opposed it last year. Tim Kaine supported it. We had a recent debate. He said it was the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do to Virginians, whether it's the men and women in our military.
Well, these are automatic across the board.
Yeah, and it's a failure of leadership to set priorities. And that's why I was opposed to it. I think leaders ought to make decisions. And clearly in the Constitution, the number one responsibility of the federal government is national defense. Now, in May of this year, the House of Representatives passed a measure to avert the cuts to national defense. And Bob Goodlatte and others voted for that. The Senate has done absolutely nothing. They're saying they want to raise taxes in this fragile economy. And I just want to be really clear with folks. I think it is absolutely wrong to use the men and women of our armed forces as a political bargaining chip to raise taxes on job-creating small business owners.
But how do we get the deficit down?
Well, you make cuts elsewhere. And I think the cuts, and in fact, you start off with something similar, if not exactly, but something similar to what the House passed. And the other part of the equation, and also I think you repeal Obamacare, that will save $1 trillion. And the other part of the equation is get the economy moving, and that's where energy can provide over $1 trillion in revenues to our country without raising taxes.
All right, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, George Allen, thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you, Bob.
Allison?